They say blood is thicker than water, but what they don't tell you is that sometimes blood can drown you. The night I threw that paycheck envelope on the table and watched my mother's face turn from greed to horror was the night I stopped being their victim. But let me back up, because the road to that moment was paved with 14 years of hell. My name is Paige, and for most of my adult life, I believed that being a good daughter meant sacrificing everything. I was wrong. It started when I was 18. My parents, Sharon and Frank Mitchell, sat me down in our cramped living room in the suburbs of Cleveland, Ohio. The wallpaper was peeling, the carpet stained with years of neglect, but they spoke to me like we were sitting in some grand estate. My younger sister Chloe, just 13 at the time, lounged on the couch beside them, already mastering that look of entitled boredom she would perfect over the years. Frank cleared his throat, his belly straining against his stained undershirt. "Paige, your mother and I have been talking. Chloe has real potential. She could be a model, an influencer, something special, but we need to invest in her future." I remember nodding, confused but willing. I had always been the plain one, the responsible one. Chloe was beautiful, everyone said so. She had that effortless charm, that photogenic smile. If she had potential, shouldn't we help her? "What does that mean?" I asked, my voice small even then. Sharon leaned forward, her eyes cold despite her smile. "It means you need to step up. You're 18 now. You can work full-time. We need you to contribute to this family, to give Chloe the opportunities she deserves." The opportunities we never had. That was how it started. No college for me. No gap year to find myself. Just a job at the Silver Spoon Diner on Route 42, slinging hash browns and coffee to truckers and factory workers. I told myself it was temporary, that once Chloe's career took off, things would get better. That lie sustained me for longer than I care to admit. The years blurred together in a haze of grease, smoke, and aching feet. I worked double shifts, sometimes 14 hours straight, my sneakers developing holes that I couldn't afford to replace. Every 2 weeks when that paycheck came, Sharon would be waiting, not asking, demanding. At first, she let me keep $20. "For your expenses," she said, as if $20 could cover anything. Then it became 10, then 5, then nothing at all. Every cent I earned went into what Frank called Chloe's future fund. And what did that fund buy? Designer clothes for Chloe's Instagram photos, professional photography sessions, a new iPhone every year, dinners at restaurants I could only dream of eating at. Meanwhile, I ate ramen noodles in the kitchen after my shifts, standing up because I was too tired to sit. Watching my sister post pictures of sushi and steak with captions about being blessed, the worst part wasn't the money. It was the way they made me feel like I didn't matter, like I was a walking ATM, not a daughter, not a sister, just a resource to be extracted and exploited. Frank never hit me with his fists. He didn't need to. His words did the job just fine. "You're lucky we let you live here rent-free," he would say, as if the tiny closet I slept in was some grand favor. "You think you'd survive out there on your own? You're nothing without this family." Sharon was worse. She had perfected the art of the casual cruelty. Poor Paige. She would sigh to her friends during their afternoon gossip sessions, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "She's just not ambitious like Chloe. Some people are meant to serve, I suppose." I swallowed it all. I absorbed every insult, every dismissal, every moment of being treated like I was less than human, because they were my family, because I kept hoping that one day they would see me. Really see me. Everything changed when Leo was born. I met Marcus at the diner. He was a regular, always kind, always left good tips. We started talking, then dating, then fell into something that felt like love, though I'm not sure I knew what real love was back then. When I got pregnant at 23, I was terrified to tell my parents, but Marcus promised we would figure it out together. Then Marcus died. A car accident on I-90, black ice and a semi-truck that couldn't stop in time. He was gone before the ambulance arrived, and suddenly, I was alone with a baby growing inside me and a family that saw this as one more opportunity to take. Leo came into the world on a freezing January morning. He was perfect. 7 pounds, 3 ounces of pure innocence, with dark hair and eyes that seemed to see straight into my soul. When I held him for the first time, I felt something I had never felt before. Purpose, love, the bone-deep certainty that I would do anything to protect this tiny human. My parents saw something else. They saw another mouth to feed, another excuse to work me harder. Sharon made it clear from day one. If you're going to keep that baby, you're going to work twice as hard. We're not running a charity here. As if I hadn't been supporting them for 5 years already. So I did. I worked every shift I could get. I came home smelling like fryer oil and stale coffee, my breasts aching with milk, my arms trembling from carrying heavy trays for hours. I would feed Leo, change him, hold him until he fell asleep, and then collapse for a few hours before starting all over again. The abuse escalated after Leo arrived. It was as if my parents resented his very existence, resented that my attention was divided, resented that I had created something of my own. Chloe, now 18 and convinced she was on the verge of stardom despite having exactly 0 modeling contracts, treated Leo like he was an annoying pet. She would blow cigarette smoke in his face and laugh when he coughed. She would blast music during his nap time because she was filming TikToks. When I asked her to be quieter, she told me to control my brat. Frank started calling Leo the mistake. To his face, a 5-year-old child being told he was a mistake by his own grandfather. But the moment that truly broke something inside me happened on a Tuesday evening in March. I had just finished a particularly brutal shift. The diner had been slammed, we were short-staffed, and I had burned my hand badly on a hot plate. The skin on my palm was blistered and red, throbbing with every heartbeat. But I had my paycheck in my jacket pocket, and all I could think about was that Leo needed new shoes. His current pair had holes in the toes, and I had watched him try to hide it from me that morning, ashamed. When I walked through the door of our house, Leo ran to me immediately, his little face lighting up. "Mommy! Mommy! Can we get dinosaur waffles tomorrow? Please?" Before I could answer, Sharon appeared in the kitchen doorway. She didn't ask how my shift was. She didn't notice my burned hand. She just held out her palm, her eyes hard. "Paycheck." I hesitated. It was only a second, a brief moment of resistance, but it was enough. "Mom, I need to keep some back this time. Leo needs shoes. His are falling apart." The words were barely out of my mouth when Sharon's face twisted with rage. She didn't argue. She didn't explain why Chloe's needs should come before a child's basic necessity. She simply grabbed the cast iron skillet from the stove, the one still hot from making herself and Frank dinner, and swung it at me. The impact was like being hit by lightning. The skillet connected with my lower back with a sound that seemed impossibly loud, a dull metallic thud that echoed through the kitchen. I dropped to my knees, the pain exploding through my spine, radiating outward until I couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't do anything but gasp for air. Leo started screaming. I heard it through the ringing in my ears, his terrified cries of, "Mommy, Mommy!" And I wanted to comfort him, to tell him I was okay, but I couldn't speak. Frank's voice boomed from the living room. He didn't come to check on me. He didn't care that his wife had just assaulted his daughter. He just yelled, "Who the hell do you think you are? You don't get to keep money. You're an investment in Chloe's future. That's all you are." Then I heard the footsteps on the stairs. Chloe, descending from her bedroom in her expensive silk pajamas, the ones I had paid for with my wages. She looked at me on the floor, at Leo sobbing and trying to help me up, and she laughed. Actually laughed. "Oh my God, Mom, she's being so dramatic. Next time use the bigger skillet. Maybe it will knock some sense into her." I wrapped my arms around Leo, pulling him close to my chest, shielding him from this nightmare. His small body shook with sobs against mine, and through the pain and the humiliation and the rage, I felt something shift inside me, something fundamental and irreversible. I looked up at my mother, my father, my sister, these people who shared my blood, and I felt nothing but emptiness. Not love, not even hate, just a cold, hollow void where my heart used to be. That night, after they had all gone to their comfortable beds, purchased with my money, I sat in my tiny room with Leo, asleep in my arms. My back throbbed. I could feel the bruise forming, the skin tight and hot. I knew it would be massive, purple and black and yellow, a map of my mother's contempt. I pulled out my phone, the cheap prepaid one I bought myself, and I started researching how to open a bank account online, how to document abuse, how to get an emergency restraining order, how to escape. The next morning, I went to work as usual. I smiled at customers. I refilled coffee. I pretended everything was normal. But inside, I was planning. My coworker, Marco, noticed something was different. Marco was one of the good ones, a middle-aged man with kind eyes who always had an encouraging word. During our break, he found me in the back alley, and I finally broke down. I told him everything. The abuse, the financial exploitation, the skillet. I showed him the bruise on my back, the skin mottled and grotesque. Marco didn't say much. He just hugged me while I cried, and then he said, "I have a cousin in Columbus. She has a spare room. When you're ready to leave, I'll drive you there myself. You just say the word." Over the next 2 weeks, I became someone else. On the surface, I was the same compliant Paige, handing over my paychecks, accepting insults, keeping my head down. But underneath, I was building an escape route. I started keeping my cash tips in a tampon box, somewhere I knew Sharon would never look. It wasn't much, maybe $10 or $15 a shift, but it added up. I opened an online bank account using Marco's address, and I started depositing what I could. More importantly, I started documenting. I turned on my phone's voice recorder during family interactions, hiding the device in my apron pocket. I captured everything. Chloe bragging to her friends about how I was basically a servant. Frank and Sharon discussing how to squeeze more out of her before she's used up. Chloe's voice, high and bratty, saying, "Honestly, I don't know why Paige even exists. Like, her only purpose is to fund my lifestyle. Mom and Dad said so. I recorded Sharon yelling at Leo, calling him worthless. I recorded Frank making crude jokes about my dead boyfriend. I collected evidence like a lawyer preparing for trial. And then I had an idea. A terrible, beautiful idea. Chloe had been lying to everyone about her modeling career. She claimed she had been offered a contract with a prestigious agency, that she was on the verge of her big break. She posted about it constantly, hashtagging inspirational quotes about following your dreams. It was all fiction, but she had convinced herself it was real. I decided to throw her a party. A celebration of her success. And I invited everyone who mattered to my parents. I used some of my hidden cash to buy food and decorations. I sent carefully worded invitations to Pastor Michael from the church, where Sharon pretended to be devout. To Mrs. Henderson, the nosiest neighbor on our street, the one Sharon constantly tried to impress. To Brendan, Chloe's wealthy boyfriend, and, most crucially, to his parents, who were prominent in local business circles. Sharon was thrilled when I told her about the party. She thought I was finally embracing my role, finally celebrating my sister properly. She didn't question my motives. Why would she? In her mind, I was too beaten down to ever fight back. The evening of the party arrived. Our shabby house had never looked better. I had cleaned every corner, hung streamers, laid out food on the dining table. The guests arrived dressed in their Sunday best, ready to celebrate Chloe's triumph. Sharon, Frank, and Chloe were in their element, holding court in the living room. Sharon talked about how proud she was, how she always knew Chloe was special. Frank boasted about the sacrifices they had made as a family. Chloe basked in the attention, her phone out, taking selfies with everyone. I waited until everyone was seated, until the room was full of expectant faces. Then I walked in with Leo by my side. Sharon turned to me with that familiar look of expectation, her hand extended automatically. Paycheck. This was it, the moment I had been planning for weeks. I took a slow breath, feeling the weight of every eye in the room, and I spoke clearly. Actually, Mom, I think you should ask Chloe for money. After all, hasn't all of my salary been going to her brilliant modeling career? The room went quiet. Pastor Michael shifted uncomfortably. Mrs. Henderson's eyes widened with interest. Before Sharon could respond, I turned to address our guests directly. Thank you all for coming. You've always seen our family as so perfect, haven't you? So close-knit and supportive. Sharon's face flushed red. Paige, what are you? I cut her off. I've worked at the Silver Spoon Diner for 7 years, 14-hour shifts, sometimes 6 days a week. And every single paycheck, every dollar I've earned, has been taken from me to fund Chloe's lifestyle, not her career, her lifestyle. She's lying. Sharon's voice was shrill now, panicked. She's having some kind of breakdown. She's always been unstable. I remained calm. I had practiced this. Leo, sweetheart, can you tell these nice people where the bruise on Mommy's back came from? My 5-year-old son looked up at me with those trusting eyes, then turned to face the room. His voice was small but clear. Grandma hit Mommy with the hot pan. It made Mommy cry. The silence that followed was deafening. I watched the horror dawn on Pastor Michael's face, the shock on Mrs. Henderson's, the confusion on Brendan's. Frank tried to salvage the situation, his voice booming with false authority. Now hold on, there's obviously been a misunderstanding. I pulled out my phone and pressed play. Chloe's voice filled the room, tinny from the speaker but unmistakable. The thing about my sister is that she's literally just a tool. She exists to make money for me. I mean, that's what my parents always say. She's an investment in my future. Without me, she would be nothing. Then Frank's voice, talking to Sharon, we need to squeeze everything we can out of her while she's still useful. Once that kid gets older and she can't work as much, she's going to be dead weight. Sharon's voice. Maybe we should just kick her out once Chloe really takes off. She served her purpose. I watched the color drain from my parents' faces. I watched Brendan's expression shift from confusion to disgust. His parents looked like they had stumbled into a horror movie. But I wasn't done yet. I walked to the table and pulled out the envelope with my paycheck. I threw it down in front of Sharon. Here, this is what you want, right? Take it. It's all yours. Frank, ever the bully, snatched up the envelope and tore it open, as if proving his right to my labor would somehow salvage this disaster. But there was no check inside. Just torn pieces of newspaper, random bills, and on top, a single sheet of paper printed in bold letters, copy of emergency restraining order. The room erupted. Brendan stood up, his face pale, and took his parents' arms. We're leaving, he said quietly, and the look he gave Chloe was full of contempt. They walked out without another word. Pastor Michael followed quickly, muttering something about needing to be somewhere. Mrs. Henderson practically ran for the door, her expression gleeful with the scandal she would spread throughout the neighborhood. Sharon let out a sound somewhere between a scream and a wail. Frank's face went from red to purple to a sickly gray. He collapsed into his chair, the paper still clutched in his shaking hand. And Chloe, my beautiful, terrible sister, completely fell apart. She started screaming, throwing her phone, yanking at her hair like a toddler having a meltdown. You ruined everything. You ruined my life. I hate you. I picked up Leo, who wrapped his arms tight around my neck. I had already packed our essentials in a bag hidden in Marco's car. I had already filed the paperwork. I had already burned every bridge. Goodbye, I said simply. I walked through the chaos I had created, through the ruins of the only family I had ever known, and I stepped out into the cool evening air. Marco was waiting at the curb in his old Honda, engine running. I put Leo in the car seat I had bought with my hidden money, clicked his seatbelt, and climbed into the passenger seat. As Marco pulled away from the curb, I looked in the side mirror. I could see my mother in the doorway, still screaming. I could see the lights of that house growing smaller and smaller. And then we turned the corner, and it was gone. The drive to Columbus took 2 hours. Leo fell asleep 20 minutes in, exhausted from the stress. Marco played soft music on the radio, and didn't ask questions. He understood that some moments are too big for words. His cousin Elena was waiting for us when we arrived. She was a social worker, and Marco had told her everything. She showed us to a small but clean bedroom, gave us towels and blankets, and told us to stay as long as we needed. That first night in a strange house, lying in a real bed with Leo curled against my side, I waited to feel something. Guilt, maybe. Regret. Some sense of loss for the family I had destroyed. But all I felt was peace. The weeks that followed were hard in different ways. I had to explain everything to lawyers and social workers. I had to show them my bruises, play them my recordings, walk them through years of financial abuse. It was humiliating and exhausting and necessary. The restraining order was granted permanently. My parents tried to fight it, but the evidence was overwhelming. They tried to spin a story about me being an ungrateful daughter, but the recordings spoke for themselves. Chloe's social media empire collapsed overnight. The story spread through our old neighborhood like wildfire, and suddenly everyone knew the truth about how she had funded her lifestyle. Brendan broke up with her publicly. Her followers, sensing blood in the water, turned on her. The comments on her posts became vicious. Her carefully curated image was destroyed. I wish I could say I felt bad for her. I didn't. I got a job at a small cafe in Columbus. The pay was less than the diner, but I got to keep all of it. Every single dollar was mine. The first time I bought Leo new shoes that fit properly with no holes, I cried in the store. Elena helped me apply for assistance programs I didn't even know existed. Food stamps, childcare subsidies, housing assistance. For the first time in my adult life, I wasn't drowning. I started therapy. My therapist, Dr. Sarah Chen, was patient and kind as I unpacked years of trauma. She taught me words I didn't know I needed. Narcissistic abuse, financial exploitation, parentification. She taught me that what had happened to me wasn't normal, wasn't acceptable, wasn't my fault. You were conditioned to believe your only value was in what you could provide to others, Doctor. Chen explained during one session. But your value is inherent. You matter because you exist, not because of what you can do for someone else. It took months for me to really understand that. Years of programming doesn't disappear overnight. Leo thrived in our new life. He started kindergarten at a good school. He made friends. He stopped flinching when people raised their voices. He laughed more, played more, was more of a kid. One day, about 6 months after we left, he looked up at me and said, "Mommy, I like it here. Are we going to stay forever?" "Yes, baby," I told him. "We're home." My parents tried to reach out a few times, always through third parties since they couldn't contact me directly. They sent messages through old neighbors, through distant relatives. The messages ranged from apologetic to threatening, but they all had the same basic request. Come back. Give us another chance. We've changed. But I knew better. People like Sharon and Frank don't change. They just get better at manipulation. Chloe sent me a long email about a year after I left. It was a masterpiece of non-apology, full of phrases like, "I'm sorry you felt hurt," and "we all made mistakes." She claimed she wanted to reconnect, to rebuild our sisterly bond. I read it once and then deleted it. Some relationships aren't worth saving. I started taking classes at the community college, just 1 or 2 at a time, working toward a degree in social work. I wanted to help people like me, people trapped in situations they think they can't escape. I made new friends, people who respected me, who valued my opinions, who didn't see me as a resource to exploit. I learned what healthy relationships felt like. I learned that love shouldn't hurt, that family shouldn't require you to set yourself on fire to keep them warm. On Leo's 6th birthday, I threw him a party. A real party, with decorations and cake and games. I invited his school friends and Elena and Marco and the neighbors from our apartment building. It was small and chaotic and perfect. As I watched him blow out his candles, his face glowing with joy, I realized something. I had spent so many years sacrificing for people who didn't deserve it. But this was a sacrifice worth making. Everything I did now, every extra shift I worked, every dollar I saved, it was all for him, for us. For the life we were building together. Marco told me later that my parents' house had gone into foreclosure. Without my income, they couldn't keep up with the bills. They had to move into a small apartment across town. Chloe was working at a call center, her dreams of fame long dead. I should have felt vindicated. I should have felt some sense of justice. But mostly, I just felt tired. Tired of caring about people who had never cared about me. The second year in Columbus was easier. I got a promotion at the cafe. Leo got straight A's in first grade. I finished my associate's degree and started applying to 4-year programs. We moved into a better apartment, one with 2 bedrooms and a small balcony where I grew tomatoes in pots. I even went on a few dates. Nothing serious, but it was nice to remember that I was a person, not just a mother or a worker or a victim. I was Paige. I liked reading mystery novels and terrible reality TV. I was good at baking but terrible at keeping plants alive. I had opinions and dreams and value. Dr. Chen told me I had post-traumatic growth. You took something horrible and used it to become stronger. She said, that doesn't mean what happened to you is okay, but it means you're resilient. One afternoon, I was at the park with Leo when I saw a young woman sitting on a bench, crying softly into her phone. Something about her posture, the defeated slump of her shoulders, reminded me of myself 5 years ago. I sat down next to her. Hey, are you okay? She looked up, startled, then shook her head. Family stuff, she muttered. Want to talk about it? I offered. She hesitated, then started to speak. Her story poured out, a familiar tale of manipulation and control, of a mother who took everything and gave nothing back, of siblings who were treated like royalty while she was treated like a servant. I listened. And when she finished, I told her my story. Not all of it, but enough. I told her that leaving was possible, that life on the other side was better, that she deserved better. I gave her Elena's number. She's a social worker. She can help you figure out your options. No pressure. Just, if you need help, there are people who care. The young woman thanked me, her eyes red but hopeful. I don't know if she ever called Elena. I don't know if she got out, but I hope she did. I hope she found her moment of clarity, her breaking point, her freedom. That's the thing about surviving abuse. You don't just save yourself, you become a lifeline for others. Last month, I graduated with my bachelor's degree in social work. Leo came to the ceremony in his best clothes, holding a bouquet of flowers he had picked out himself. Marco and Elena were there, cheering louder than anyone. I walked across that stage and accepted my diploma, and I thought about 18-year-old me, being told I didn't matter enough for college. I matter. I always mattered. I work now for a nonprofit that helps survivors of domestic violence and financial abuse. I help people navigate the legal system, find resources, escape impossible situations. I see myself in every client who walks through our doors, and I tell them what I wish someone had told me years ago. You deserve better. You are worth more. And yes, you can leave. Leo is 8 now. He's a happy, well-adjusted kid who thinks his mom is a superhero. He doesn't remember much about those early years in Ohio, about the house full of cruelty. Sometimes he asks questions, and I answer them honestly but gently. He knows his grandparents made bad choices. He knows we're better off without them. He also knows that family isn't always about blood. It's about the people who show up for you, who love you, who treat you with respect. Marco is Uncle Marco now. Elena is Aunt Elena. They come to his school plays and birthday parties and soccer games. They're his family. They're our family. Sometimes, late at night when Leo is asleep, I think about that moment in the kitchen when Sharon swung that skillet at me. The moment that could have broken me but instead became my catalyst for change. I think about the girl I was, so desperate for love that I accepted crumbs, so afraid of being alone that I stayed in hell. I wish I could go back and tell her it gets better. I wish I could tell her she's stronger than she knows. But I can't. All I can do is live the life she dreamed of, the one she was too scared to reach for. I don't hate my parents anymore. I don't hate Chloe. Hate requires energy, requires care, and I have neither to spare for them. They're just people I used to know, characters in a story about who I used to be. My story isn't about revenge, even though that party was pretty epic. It's about reclamation. It's about taking back my power, my dignity, my life. It's about learning that walking away isn't giving up. Sometimes, walking away is the bravest thing you can do. If you're reading this and seeing yourself in my story, hear me. You can leave. You can start over. You can build something better. It won't be easy. There will be hard days and scary moments and times when you doubt yourself. But on the other side is freedom. On the other side is peace. On the other side is a life that's actually yours. I'm not a victim anymore. I'm a survivor. More than that, I'm someone who's thriving. And if I can do it, so can you. The girl who threw that envelope on the table and walked out of hell is gone. In her place is a woman who knows her worth, a mother who's breaking cycles, a social worker who's helping others find their way out of the dark. My name is Paige Mitchell, and this is my story of becoming free.